And that's my first question, really. Why do you do so few interviews?
Well, I do get asked on a lot of occasions, especially right after the election. But, I mean, the argument I make is I don't need the platform. So a lot of people have to rely on the mainstream media to get their message out there. I don't. I've got InfoWars, I've got YouTube, I've got Twitter. Still, until I get banned. But I don't need to rely on them. And they write hit pieces about me on a regular basis. Like The Independent, for example, which still has a large online presence, by the way. They've got like 7 million followers on Facebook. They have asked me about 3 times for an interview, in between writing vicious hit pieces about me. So it's like, what do I get out of you to give you something back? And I don't need you anyway. So, I mean, that's the train of thinking. I mean, I do some, but it is quite rare. I've never been asked by Fox News, for example, which is quite interesting, given who else asked me. But I don't need the mainstream media to get my message out, so why would I need to waste my time?
Yeah, and there's no doubt you've got a huge audience. Your videos get hundreds of thousands of hits. One of your ones recently over 1 million. I now see you've got over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. I mean, this has obviously taken you a number of years and a lot of hard work, I imagine, to get to this point. It doesn't just happen. What motivates you? What's motivated you over the years to keep on going with this and build such an audience?
It's the left-wing hate machine. That's what motivates me. That's why I get up every day. They don't seem to understand the more they attack me, the more motivation that gives me. So it used to be, you know, just addressing injustice, addressing lies from the mainstream media. Now it's just the sheer mechanised scale of this hate machine that we're up against. And I'm talking about, you know, Tommy Robinson, people like that, they can't even go out on the street without being attacked. You know, Nigel Farage has talked about it in the past. Not to get it wrong, the vast majority of interactions that we would have with the public, for example, are overwhelmingly positive, like 90% plus. It's mainly online where you see all the vitriol, all the hatred, but that only energizes me more because it gives me the sense that I have the moral high ground. The left is always pretending they have the moral high ground. That's why they seem so energized and sanctimonious about everything. But no, if you're spewing hate at people for their opinions, you're not engaging in a logical debate, then the only thing you've got left is hatred, is ad hominem arguments, and that's why I like arguing with them, because it's so damn easy, because they don't have an argument.
Now, I mean, you talk about a lot of different things in your video. What's your number one aim at the moment? We've seen the new video. Can you tell us a bit about what's on your mind at the minute?
Well, the big thing at the moment is free speech. We've got a moral panic, which is being contrived by the mainstream media, by the political class, which is, and I can't believe they're still going with this, everyone who disagrees with me is a racist, is a Nazi, is a white supremacist. They've doubled down on it. What did 2016 teach us? If anything else, that argument does not work. But since Charlottesville, since this moral panic that's been whipped up, they're doubling down on it more. You had a former Bush advisor last night going on Facebook and saying 100% of Trump supporters are racist, period. And then he gets a massive backlash. He's like, oh, there's so much hate against me. I can't understand why there would be such a backlash. Because you're spouting absolute idiocy, but they're doubling down on it. Salon.com last couple of days ago came out with an article, you know, we need to give up on identity politics. Some of them on the left are finally realising that you have to have actual policy proposals, actual arguments to resonate with ordinary voters, ordinary working people. Most still don't realise that. If you read that Salon.com article, the top comment on it was, oh, this is just your white privilege. So they still don't get it, but, you know, if you're a conservative, if you're a libertarian, you should welcome that, because it shows that they haven't learned anything. The fact they still have to resort to this reductive, dumb argument which doesn't resonate with most people.
Now, obviously, a lot of your videos and things are focused on America, but you have done some on the UK. You've talked about people like Sadiq Khan and Jeremy Corbyn. What's your sort of overall outlook at the moment at the state of British politics? How do you see things at the minute?
Well, it seems to have calmed down a bit since the election, obviously, but I warned before Brexit, and it's exactly what happened. They would try to make it messy at every step of the way. We've seen previous examples in other European countries where, you know, the population votes against, whether it be the Lisbon Treaty or anything else. They simply come back and have another vote. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. It's what the EU political class, the British political class is doing. They're trying to make it so messy that people end up just losing faith, losing energy in it and giving up on it. And that's what we're seeing right now, and that's what I warned against. It's that people thought it was a massive victory. The first thing I said was, this is not over. This is the beginning of the battle. Now we see that. So that's the current battle taking shape in British politics. And it's a quagmire because the EU wants it to appear like a quagmire to put off other European countries from having that same vote, because it would be such a gigantic mess. That was their aim from the very beginning, and we see that playing out now.
Have you ever considered going into party politics or going down the more conventional political route? Do you see yourself in the future potentially doing that, or do you, in the medium to long term, you want to stay doing what you're doing?
I really love what I'm doing, and it just seems like a long slog to be a politician and to have to constantly be on the defensive and responding to everything. Plus, I've had success in what I do in terms of reaching out, especially to younger people who probably wouldn't be inclined to get into politics or listen to a political message. So it's something that's never appealed to me. People dig out, skeletons in people's closets. I don't have anything personal that's shady or anything, but, I've talked about some quite fruity things in the past, in my younger days, in terms of conspiracy theories. We don't all believe what we believed 10 years ago, but they would drag that up, obviously. But just on a pure level, from my perspective, I wouldn't be that interested, because I love what I'm doing now so much, and it's having an effect. Why would I change it?
Not that long ago, it had been virtually impossible for someone like you, outside of the political system, not in Parliament or anything like that, to have the audience that you've got. And obviously we're seeing it, I think we're seeing it more in America than here, but it's starting to happen here. Where do you think that the political system and society is heading? The ability for people to build these massive online audiences, how do you think in the longer term it's going to affect and change the way that politics is done?
Well, it's already having an effect, which is why there's such a panic now amongst the big corporations that really have a monopoly on independent free speech platforms, at least people independently being able to use those platforms. So they didn't see Trump winning. They completely freaked out afterwards. There was a long delay, but now they finally realised that they have to start cracking down on these platforms that people have used for free speech to change the results of future elections. You have Google now introducing this limited state mode, whereby certain opinions are just, behind an electronic firewall. They now realise how much power they have to influence people. You've got people within Google who censor and change algorithms to make certain search results appear above others to benefit a certain political viewpoint, which is obviously far left. So, they didn't realise the gift that they had gave us. And they realise that, and now they're afraid of it, which is why they're censoring a lot of people on YouTube. I've managed to escape some of it to a certain extent because I whine and bitch about it every single day on Twitter, and I think they wouldn't want to, get messy and have to deal with it if they directly targeted me. But we are seeing an increase in censorship across all the social media platforms, which is why there's now a call for them to be seen, maybe not directly regulated, but treated as a public commons, in America especially, because people are being arbitrarily discriminated against for having certain opinions. It's like if your electricity provider said, sorry, we're going to cut off your service because we don't like your political opinions, that would be a massive deal. Google is now a monopoly, and they've started to do that. So this argument about, it's a private company, they can do what they want, it's kind of changing now because it's such a giant monopoly that they're controlling everything. You can extrapolate that out to companies like Amazon. Like Amazon is moving into groceries now. So if you have the wrong opinion and your Amazon account is linked to another account, maybe your Amazon account will be terminated. People are really reliant on massive companies like Amazon. So that's the Orwellian direction in which it could head.
What do you make of the British mainstream media? Do you ever watch BBC, Channel 4 News, any of these things at all? What do you make
I watch clips on Twitter. I wouldn't sit down and watch a whole broadcast. It's really horrendous. The fact that, it was Channel 4 recently that had an actual jihadist. They gave him a platform. It wasn't the first time they've done that. The interactions I have with them, as we mentioned earlier, they've occasionally invited me on, but that's stopped now. I don't really watch any mainstream media at all at this point, apart from clips, which I respond to on the internet. So the mainstream media to me is a massive joke. The fact that they still hold up this pretense of neutrality. They still pretend to be non-biased reporters. It's like, I admit, I'm completely biased. I have an opinion, I wear it on my sleeve. Yeah, I'm not a news reporter, I'm a commentator, but the fact that they have reporters, people like, they get up and they're not commentators. Like, if you come out and say, I'm a commentator, this is my view, fair enough. But they're like political editors. They're supposed to be right down the line. And they get up at press conferences with Trump and say, what about this? What about this person calling you a racist or whatever? They're towing that narrative. Like, stop pretending to be neutral. We know you're not non-partisan at this point. Just be honest with the viewers. That's what gets me most about them.
The jihadi threat that the world, Europe, America faces, you've spoken out on this. I mean, how do you survey the situation, the security threat that we all now face? What would you like to see be done? I mean, is there anything now that can be done that politicians can do to alleviate this threat?
Well, I mean, I don't have too much hope at the moment. You can talk about different solutions, but if you import hundreds of thousands of people a year from a certain culture and a certain belief system, you're never going to stem the tide. It's not so much the terrorism that concerns me, tragic though, for the people affected. It's the cultural aspects. We had a story today out of Leipzig in Germany, where a woman in her 50s went for a jog in a park in the morning. This wasn't late at night or anything. She was raped, beaten by a migrant, or a southerner, as they call them in Germany, because that's politically correct. And the police came out the next day and said, oh, the solution is women can now not go jogging alone. You have to go jogging with someone else, or have a man with you, or be looking over your shoulder constantly while you're jogging. In a public park at 9 a.m. in the morning, that's what the German police are telling their citizens. You had it after Cologne. The mayor of Cologne came out and said, keep the potential rapists at arm's length. Walk in pairs, don't be alone. That is literally capitulating to this Islamic modesty culture, where women can't leave the house without a chaperone. They can't cover their heads in burqas without, being subject to rape and sexual assault. So they're openly capitulating to the culture that they're bringing in. So the terrorism stuff is tragic and it's horrendous. What concerns me more is just the day-to-day grind, the cultural changes that we're going to see, because if they don't reverse those policies, and even if they do, just the numbers demographically that they've imported, that's only going to get worse, if not, stay the same, which is pretty bad enough right now. I mean, you've got Finland today, and we've seen this in Sweden, saying that they're going to give returning ISIS jihadists free apartments, free social welfare to reintegrate them back into society. It's like, why would you let back into your country somebody who's been running around beheading people, working for ISIS in Syria, in Iraq? They're letting them back in and saying, we'll give you benefits, we'll put you ahead of the queue in front of actual Finnish citizens, and we'll give you a free apartment. Absolutely crazy what's happening in Europe right now. But as Douglas Murray makes clear in his book, even if he stopped all this immigration right now, demographically it's over basically for many European countries, not for all. Eastern Europe will be very different, but his book's kind of hopeless because he lays it out in a simple demographic form, whereby even if you stopped all immigration, the damage has already been done. So that's what concerns me. America, of course, is a different story. The battle still rages there for Western civilization, basically. But after reading that book, I'm a bit more hopeless about Europe.
Speaking of America, the Trump presidency, obviously a massive shock to the establishment for Trump to win. How do you survey the Trump presidency so far? What do you think? What's your assessment of what's been going on?
Well, there's a big split within the Trump base, which is exemplified by people like Ann Coulter, who demand everything that Trump promised within 6, 7, 8 months of his presidency. It's not going to happen. Obviously, we've seen a massive campaign of hysteria contrived by the media to prevent his agenda from going through. I mean, he's had some success in terms of illegal immigration crossings are way down. The Supreme Court nomination, Gorsuch, that was a success. They can't block him on some aspects of it, they can on others, and it's going to be a long slog. Of course, the big concern, which is a concern that I've had from the very start, is if even before all these people were turfed out, if you looked at his National Security Council advisors, they were all what Trump himself would call globalists. They were all Council on Foreign Relations members. So you did have this massive amount of Obama holdovers. Then you had the nationalist wing, you know, people like Steve Bannon, Scaramucci and others who have now been turfed out, Mike Flynn as well. So now he's been isolated. He's been surrounded by these deep state globalists. So you may see some advancement on the domestic front in terms of his domestic agenda with building the wall and so forth. But in terms of foreign policy, it doesn't look very hopeful, because he's got the same neocon fraternity around him who were advising George W. Bush, and that didn't turn out so great. So that's why people are concerned about Trump. But, you know, he's enough of a maverick and an original thinker. He's got enough nous about him in terms of remaining independent that, you know, I still see some hope for it. Obviously, there are still some good people around him, but the concern within the base is that he's been completely isolated to the point now where they're sacking people within the White House if they post Infowars.com articles on their social media profiles. And that came directly from the White House. They're preventing like Breitbart articles that people have printed out from being put on his desk, because Trump likes a news digest that is across the board, that isn't just mainstream media. But now they're actually blocking people from handing him any information that isn't mainstream, that hasn't been vetted. And Trump's, you know, quite impressionable. He will make a decision based on a variety of factors, but if they limit that information that's getting to him, then obviously his decisions are going to be more limited as a result of that.
Paul J. Watson, thank you very much for your time. Speak to you again soon.
Pleasure.
Thank you.